The fluorescent lights of the diner buzzed like angry wasps above my head, their harsh glare making the grease stains on my apron look worse than they already were. My feet ached. The kind of deep, bone-tired ache that came from standing for 12 hours straight on linoleum floors that had seen better decades. The smell of burnt coffee and day-old bacon grease clung to my hair, my clothes, my skin. No amount of scrubbing ever seemed to wash it away completely. I wiped down the same table for the third time, my movements mechanical, autopilot. Through the smudged window, I could see the parking lot where my ancient Honda sat wheezing in the corner spot, held together by prayers and duct tape. Emma was with Mrs. Chen next door, sweet Mrs. Chen, who charged me half what she should for babysitting because she knew I was drowning. 3 years old, and my daughter had never met her father. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. "Table 6 needs refills," Gary barked from behind the counter, his voice cutting through my fog of exhaustion. I grabbed the coffee pot, its heat seeping through the worn towel I'd wrapped around the handle, and made my rounds. The diner was nearly empty at this hour. That dead zone between lunch and dinner, where time seemed to congeal like the gravy in the kitchen. Just a few regulars nursing cups of coffee they'd make last for hours, and the door chimed. I glanced up out of habit, and the world tilted sideways. 3 men entered, but my eyes locked on the one in the center. He moved like gravity bent around him, like the air itself rearranged to accommodate his presence. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked black in the diner's harsh lighting. He wore a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that caught the light when he moved. The fabric draped perfectly across his frame, custom-made, expensive in a way that made everything else in the diner look shabby by comparison. The 2 men flanking him were clearly security. Identical dark suits, alert eyes that swept the room with professional efficiency, hands that hung loosely at their sides in a way that suggested they could reach for weapons in a heartbeat. One of them, the broader one with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, moved ahead and scanned the booths before nodding almost imperceptibly. They chose a corner booth, the one with sightlines to both entrances and no windows at its back. Strategic. Deliberate. The man in the center slid into the seat with fluid grace, and I caught a hint of his cologne as he passed. Something dark and expensive, cedar and bergamot with an underlying note of leather. It cut through the stale grease smell of the diner like a knife, my heart hammered against my ribs. Men like that didn't come to places like this. Not unless something was very wrong or very right, and in my experience, it was always the former. "You gonna stand there all day, or you gonna take their order?" Gary's voice snapped me back to reality. I smoothed down my apron, very aware of the ketchup stain near my hip, the frayed hem, the way my ponytail had started to unravel over the course of my shift. I probably looked exactly like what I was. A struggling single mother who hadn't slept properly in 3 years. My sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as I approached their table. The 2 security men watched me with the intensity of guard dogs, but the man in the center kept his gaze fixed on the window, his profile sharp against the fading afternoon light. "Welcome to Rosie's," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" He turned to look at me, and I forgot how to breathe. His eyes weren't black. They were the deepest brown I'd ever seen. So dark they swallowed light, but it wasn't their color that froze me in place. It was the intensity behind them. The weight of a gaze that saw everything, calculated everything, missed nothing. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he was solving in real time, taking in every detail from my scuffed sneakers to the dark circles I'd tried to cover with drugstore concealer that morning. "Coffee," he said, his voice low and smooth, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. Or Greek. Black. The 2 security men ordered the same, their voices clipped and professional. I scribbled on my notepad even though I'd remember. 3 black coffees, corner booth, and tried to ignore the way my hands trembled slightly. "Anything else?" "We've got fresh pie, apple and cherry." "No." His eyes hadn't left my face, just the coffee. I nodded and turned away, feeling the weight of his stare like a physical touch between my shoulder blades. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter and pressed my palm to my chest, feeling my heart race beneath my ribs. You okay? Carla, the other waitress, gave me a concerned look as she loaded dirty plates into the industrial dishwasher. Fine, I lied, just tired. I poured 3 cups of coffee, my hands surprisingly steady now that I couldn't see him. When I returned to the booth, the 3 men were speaking in low tones, their conversation dying the moment I approached. I set down the cups, very careful not to spill, very aware that the broad security man was watching my every movement. Here you go. I started to turn away, but his voice stopped me. What's your name? I turned back slowly. He was watching me again with that unnerving intensity, his long fingers wrapped around the coffee cup but not drinking. Sarah, I said, because my name tag was right there on my chest, and lying would have been stupid. Sarah Mitchell. Sarah. He repeated it like he was testing the weight of it on his tongue. You've been working here long? It was a simple question, but something about the way he asked it made my stomach twist. 2 years. Why? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Just curious. One of the security men, the scarred one, shifted in his seat, and I caught the glimpse of something dark and metallic beneath his jacket. A gun. They were armed. Of course they were armed. Is there anything else I can get you? I asked, taking a small step back. No. He lifted the coffee cup to his lips, and I noticed his hands. Strong, with long fingers and perfectly clean nails. A silver watch gleamed at his wrist, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. Thank you, Sarah. The dismissal was clear. I walked away on legs that felt like water, hyper-aware that he was still watching me. I could feel it like heat against my back. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. The 3 men stayed for exactly 45 minutes, speaking in voices too low for me to catch even when I refilled their cups. The man in the center made 2 phone calls, speaking in rapid Italian that confirmed my earlier guess about his accent. He never raised his voice, but something about his tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. A cold authority that suggested disagreeing with him would be a fatal mistake. When they finally stood to leave, the scarred security man placed $200 bills on the table for 3 cups of coffee that cost maybe $6 total. I stared at the money, my throat tight. That was more than I made in tips all week. Maybe all month. Wait. I grabbed the bills and hurried after them, catching them just as they reached the door. Sir, this is too much. Way too much. He turned, and we were suddenly close. Close enough that I could see the shadow of stubble along his jaw. Close enough to smell that expensive cologne again. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body despite the 3 feet of space between us. Keep it. His voice was quiet but absolute. The kind of voice that didn't expect argument. I can't. It's, you have a daughter. It wasn't a question. His eyes dropped briefly to my left hand, where I'd started wearing a cheap silver ring on my right hand instead, having long ago pawned my actual wedding ring. 3 years old. Emma. The blood drained from my face. How do you? Buy her something nice. He reached out and I flinched before I could stop myself. His hand paused midair, something flickering in his dark eyes. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Instead of touching me, he gestured to the bills in my hand. Consider it a gift. I don't accept gifts from strangers, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Then we'll have to remedy that. His lips curved into a real smile this time, and it transformed his face from coldly handsome to devastatingly beautiful. We're not strangers anymore. I'm Dante. He didn't offer his last name. Somehow I knew better than to ask for it. The scarred security man opened the door, and cold November air rushed in, carrying the smell of car exhaust and impending rain. Outside, a black SUV waited at the curb, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and danger in equal measure. Wait, I said again, and immediately wanted to kick myself. But something about this whole situation felt wrong, felt dangerous, felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff I couldn't see the bottom of. Why do you know my daughter's name? Dante paused in the doorway, the dying sunlight catching in his dark hair, and turning it almost blue-black. When he looked back at me, his expression was unreadable. Because I make it my business to know things, Sarah. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but underneath it was steel, especially about people who interest me. And then he was gone. the door swinging shut behind him with a cheerful chime that felt grotesquely out of place. Through the window, I watched the 3 men climb into the SUV, Dante in the back, the 2 security men in front. The vehicle pulled away from the curb with the quiet purr of an expensive engine, merging into traffic and disappearing like they'd never been there at all. I stood frozen in the doorway, the $200 bills crumpled in my fist, my heart racing so fast I felt dizzy. Who was that? Carla materialized at my elbow, her eyes wide. "I don't know," I whispered, even though I was pretty sure I did know, or at least I knew what he was, if not who. The guns, the security, the expensive suit, the way he moved through the world like he owned it. Like consequences were things that happened to other people. Dangerous. That's what he was. Dangerous in a way that made my ex-husband's cruelty look like child's play. I should have thrown the money away. Should have pretended the whole encounter never happened. Should have prayed he'd never come back, but I didn't. I tucked the bills into my apron pocket and finished my shift, my mind spinning with questions I was terrified to answer. That night, after I'd picked up Emma from Mrs. Chen's and gotten her fed and bathed and tucked into the toddler bed we'd squeezed into our tiny 1-bedroom apartment, I sat at our scarred kitchen table and counted my tips. The $200 sat separate from the rest, still crisp and clean, mocking me with their perfection. I thought about what that money could buy. New shoes for Emma, whose current pair was getting too small, a month's worth of groceries if I shopped carefully, a payment toward the medical bills still piling up from when she'd had pneumonia last winter. I thought about the way Dante had looked at me. Not through me, like most people did. Not past me, like I was part of the furniture. At me, like I was something worth seeing. And I thought about the cold certainty in his voice when he'd said we weren't strangers anymore, like he'd already decided I was going to be part of his life, and my opinion on the matter was merely a formality. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part, the part that had been invisible for so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen, that part whispered that maybe, just maybe, being noticed by a dangerous man wasn't the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong, of course, but I wouldn't realize that until it was far too late. The next morning, I woke to find a black car parked outside my apartment building. Not the SUV from the diner, but something smaller, sleeker. A luxury sedan with tinted windows and chrome that gleamed even in the gray November drizzle. It was still there when I left for my shift, and still there when I came home that night. Nobody got out. Nobody approached me. But I knew. Somehow, I knew it was connected to him. On the 3rd day, I found the envelope. It was tucked into my locker at the diner. Pristine white paper with my name written in elegant script across the front. My hand shook as I opened it, half expecting a threat, a demand, something that would confirm every terrible suspicion spinning through my mind. Instead, I found an invitation. Dinner. Friday, 8 p.m. A car will pick you up. No signature, no return address, no explanation. Just an assumption that I would say yes. I crumpled the paper in my fist, anger flaring hot in my chest. Who did he think he was? Who did he think I was? Some desperate woman who'd jump at the chance to have dinner with a man who was clearly involved in things I didn't want to know about. But even as I threw the invitation in the trash, I could feel it pulling at me. That treacherous part of my brain that whispered what if and maybe and when was the last time someone wanted you for anything other than coffee refills and rent money. I left it in the trash. That night, I found a gift box on my doorstep. Inside was a coat, beautiful, expensive. The softest cashmere I'd ever touched in a deep charcoal gray that would go with everything. No note, but I didn't need one. The size was perfect. Of course it was. I should have sent it back. Should have refused delivery. Instead, I hung it in my closet next to my threadbare winter jacket and tried not to think about how it got there, how he knew where I lived, how he knew my size, how he seemed to know everything about me while I knew nothing about him except his first name and the certainty that he was the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about. Friday came faster than I wanted it to. I told myself I wasn't going. Told myself all day at work that I'd ignore the car, that I'd take Emma to Mrs. Chen's like always, and spend the evening watching cartoons and pretending I'd never met a man named Dante with eyes like midnight, and a smile that made me forget how to breathe. But at 7:45, I found myself putting on the only dress I owned that didn't have stains, a simple black sheath I'd bought for my grandmother's funeral 2 years ago, and the cashmere coat, and telling Mrs. Chen I had a work thing. She looked at me with knowing eyes and didn't ask questions, just pulled Emma into a hug and told me to have a good time. At exactly 8 p.m., a car pulled up outside my building. Not the black sedan that had been watching me, but something even more expensive. A Mercedes, maybe. Or a Bentley. I didn't know cars well enough to tell the difference between models that cost more than I'd make in a lifetime. The driver got out and opened the back door, waiting with patient professionalism. This was it. The cliff edge. The moment where I could still turn back. Still pretend none of this was happening. Still cling to my small, safe, invisible life. I stepped off the edge. The car's interior smelled like leather and that same cedar cologne. And I realized with a jolt that Dante must have been in this vehicle recently. The driver said nothing as we pulled away from my building, heading toward the upscale part of town I usually only saw from the bus when I was going to work. We drove for 20 minutes, the cityscape transforming from tired apartments and convenience stores to tree-lined streets and houses that looked like something from magazines. Finally, we turned into a long driveway that wound through manicured grounds and ended at a restaurant I'd only heard about in whispers, the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance and a single meal cost more than my weekly paycheck. The driver opened my door, and I stepped out into the cool November night, my breath fogging in the air. The restaurant glowed with warm light, and through the windows, I could see other diners. Women in designer dresses and diamonds, men in suits that made even Dante's look modest. I didn't belong here. Every instinct screamed it, but before I could turn back, the door opened. And there he was. Dante stood in the entrance, dressed in a navy suit that made his dark eyes look even deeper, his hair perfectly styled, his presence commanding the space around him like he was royalty, and everyone else was merely allowed to exist in his orbit. His eyes found mine, and that devastating smile curved his lips. Sarah. He moved toward me with that same fluid grace, closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. You came. I shouldn't have, I said, surprised by my own honesty. No, he agreed, and there was something almost sad in his expression. You probably shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did. He offered me his arm, and after a heartbeat of hesitation, I took it. His muscles were solid beneath the expensive fabric, his body heat seeping through the layers between us. He smelled like cedar and danger. And when he led me inside, every eye in the restaurant turned to watch us pass. I'd never felt more exposed and more invisible at the same time. The maitre d' led us to a private room at the back. A small, intimate space with a single table set for 2, candles flickering in crystal holders, and a view of the city lights spreading out below like a carpet of stars. Dante pulled out my chair, and I sat, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. When he took his seat across from me, his dark eyes never leaving my face, I realized with sudden, terrifying clarity that I'd made a mistake, not in coming here, but in thinking I had any control over what happened next. Thank you for the coat, I said, because someone had to break the silence, and my voice was the only thing I had any hope of controlling. It looks better on you than I imagined. His gaze swept over me, assessing but not leering, though I imagine most things would. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I can't accept gifts from you. I don't even know you. Then let's remedy that. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease in a way I envied. What would you like to know, Sarah Mitchell? Everything, I thought. Nothing. I wanted to run from this room and never look back. I wanted to stay in this moment forever, where a beautiful, dangerous man looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. What do you do? I asked finally. His smile was slow and predatory. I solve problems. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you. He paused as a waiter appeared with wine. Expensive. Judging by the label, I couldn't read. Dante waved away the tasting ritual and waited until our glasses were filled and we were alone again. Not yet, anyway. Not until I know you better. Then why am I here? Because I wanted you here. Simple, direct, terrifying in its honesty. I took a sip of wine to steady myself, and it exploded across my tongue. Rich and complex, and absolutely wasted on someone who usually drank boxed wine when I could afford it at all. That's not a reason, isn't it? He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his attention focused on me with laser intensity. When was the last time someone wanted you, Sarah? Not needed you. Not wanted you to pour their coffee or take care of their child or pay your rent. When was the last time someone looked at you and saw you? Not what you could do for them, just you. The words hit like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My eyes stung, and I blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this stranger who somehow knew exactly where to press to make me bleed. That's none of your business, I whispered. You're right. It isn't. He picked up his wine glass but didn't drink, just held it between his long fingers like he was weighing something. But I'm making it my business. Do you know why? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Because the first time I walked into that diner and saw you, exhausted, invisible to everyone else, working yourself to death for people who don't even notice you exist, I saw someone who deserved better. His voice was low, hypnotic, wrapping around me like smoke. Someone who's been broken by life but hasn't given up. Someone strong. You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think. He set down the wine glass and pulled something from his inner pocket, a manila folder that he laid on the table between us. Sarah Jane Mitchell, 27 years old. Married at 22 to Marcus Webb, divorced at 24. One daughter, Emma Marie Mitchell, 3 years old. You work 60-hour weeks between the diner and cleaning offices at night. You're 3 months behind on rent, 6 months behind on medical bills. Your car is one breakdown away from scrap. And your ex-husband hasn't paid child support in over a year. Horror crawled up my spine like icy fingers. What is this? Have you been investigating me? Due diligence. His voice remained calm, unruffled by my rising panic. I told you, Sarah. I make it my business to know things. I stood so abruptly my chair screeched against the floor. I'm leaving. Sit down. It wasn't loud. It wasn't threatening. But something in his voice made my legs fold beneath me, dropping me back into the chair like a puppet with cut strings. Dante's expression softened fractionally. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm trying to help you. By stalking me? By invading my privacy? By offering you a choice. He opened the folder and slid a paper across the table. A check. Made out to me. For an amount that made my vision swim. $50,000. What is this? My voice came out strangled. A solution to your problems. Enough to pay off your debts. Get a reliable car. Move to a better apartment. Enough to breathe for the first time in 3 years. I stared at the check like it might bite me. What do you want? Dinner? Tonight, and every Friday night for the next 3 months. His eyes held mine, dark and fathomless. That's all. 3 months of your time, and the money is yours. No strings, no expectations beyond your company. Nobody gives away $50,000 for dinner. I do. He leaned back again, and I caught a glimpse of the ruthless businessman beneath the charming exterior. Consider it an investment. In what? His smile was slow and dangerous. In you, Sarah. In what you could become if you weren't drowning. In the possibility that maybe you're exactly what I've been looking for. And what's that? Someone real. The words hung between us, weighted with meanings I couldn't begin to unpack. Outside the window, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing a life, a choice. A moment where someone decided to jump or stay safe. I looked at the check, at Dante, at the future spreading out before me like a crossroads, one path leading back to my small, struggling, safe existence, the other leading into darkness I couldn't see the bottom of. And if I say no, then the car takes you home, and we never see each other again. His voice was matter of fact, but something flickered in his eyes, disappointment maybe, or something deeper, though I think we both know you're not going to say no. He was right. God help me, he was right. Because when I looked at that check, I didn't just see money. I saw Emma in new shoes that fit. I saw an apartment with heat that actually worked. I saw myself sleeping through the night, without waking in a panic about which bill to pay first. I saw a way out. And if the price was dinner with a dangerous man who looked at me like I mattered, who saw me when everyone else looked through me, who offered me a lifeline when I was drowning, maybe that was a price I was willing to pay. "Just dinner," I said, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. "Nothing else. Just dinner." He smiled, and it felt like sealing a deal with the devil. "You have my word." I picked up the check with shaking hands, half expecting it to dissolve like smoke, but it was real, solid, proof that this whole impossible night was actually happening. "Why me?" I whispered. "Of all the women in this city, why me?" Dante stood and moved around the table, and suddenly he was close. So close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell that cedar cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes that I'd missed before. "Because," he said softly, his hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from my face with a gentleness that made my breath catch. "When I saw you in that diner, working yourself to death, and still finding a smile for strangers who don't deserve it, I saw something I thought I'd never find. Someone worth keeping." And as his fingers ghosted across my cheek with a touch lighter than air, as I sat frozen in a private room in a restaurant I'd never afford on my own, as the check for $50,000 crinkled in my grip, I realized that I'd been wrong earlier. I hadn't stepped off a cliff. I'd stepped into a cage. I just couldn't see the bars yet. The first Friday passed in a blur of expensive wine and conversation that felt like dancing on a knife's edge. Dante asked about Emma, her favorite foods, her favorite games, whether she liked to read. He listened like every word I spoke was precious, his dark eyes never leaving my face, his attention so complete, it felt like being caught in a spotlight. I didn't ask about his business. Some survival instinct warned me that certain questions had answers I didn't want to know. When the driver took me home at midnight, I found another envelope tucked into the pocket of my cashmere coat. Inside was a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, Dante Caruso, private consulting, and below it, a phone number written in that same elegant script from the invitation. "If you or Emma need anything, day or night, D." I stared at the card for a long time before tucking it into my wallet, nestled next to Emma's kindergarten enrollment forms and the receipts I'd been saving for tax season. Caruso. Now I had a last name. Not that it helped. I was smart enough not to Google a man who clearly valued his privacy enough to have armed security and know things about me he shouldn't. The check cleared on Monday. I sat in the bank lobby and watched the numbers appear in my account, watched 3 years of debt transform into something manageable, and cried so hard the teller asked if I needed medical attention. That week, I paid off the medical bills, bought Emma new shoes and winter clothes that actually fit, put down a deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in a building with functioning heat and a landlord who didn't look at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. I even took my car to a real mechanic instead of the guy who worked out of his garage and accepted payment in cash and prayers. For the first time since Marcus left, I could breathe. But breathing came with a price, and that price was due every Friday at 8 p.m. The second dinner was at a different restaurant. This one even more exclusive, with a private elevator that required a key card and a dining room that looked out over the river. Dante wore black this time, and the color made him look like something carved from shadow, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. "You look rested," he said as I sat down, and there was genuine pleasure in his voice. "Good. You were too thin before. I'm eating better now. Thanks to you, I didn't add." We both knew it. "Emma?" He poured wine. A different vintage this time, red instead of white, rich as blood. "She loves the new apartment. She has her own room now, with a window that looks out on a tree." My throat tightened. She's never had that before. Her own space. Something flickered across Dante's face. Satisfaction, maybe, or possessiveness. Every little girl should have her own room. What else does she need? Nothing. "You've already—" "What else, Sarah?" His voice was gentle but implacable, and I was learning that tone meant he'd already decided. My agreement was merely a formality. I thought about Emma's upcoming birthday. The party I'd been planning in my head. Nothing fancy, just cake and maybe a few presents. "She wants a dollhouse, one of the big wooden ones. Consider it done." "Dante, you can't just—" "I can. I will. He leaned forward, and candlelight caught in his dark eyes, turning them almost amber. Let me be clear about something, Sarah. What's mine, I protect. What's mine, I provide for, and you are mine now. The words should have terrified me, should have sent me running from the restaurant and back to my small, safe life. But instead they settled over me like a warm blanket, and I hated myself a little for how good they felt. I'm not yours, I said, but it came out weaker than I intended. His smile was slow and knowing. Not yet, but you will be. We ate courses I couldn't name, each one more elaborate than the last. Dante told me about growing up in Italy, selective details, carefully curated memories that revealed nothing about his current life, but painted a picture of a childhood split between Rome and New York, between his mother's gentle hands and his father's brutal lessons. He taught me that the world is divided into two types of people, Dante said, swirling wine in his glass. Those who take what they want, and those who lose what they have. I decided very young which one I would be. And your mother? What did she teach you? His expression shuddered. That love makes you weak, that caring for something gives the world a weapon to use against you. He paused, then added quietly, She was wrong about that, but I didn't learn the truth until after she was gone. And I wanted to ask more, how she died, when, whether that loss had created the dangerous man sitting across from me, but his body language had closed off, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, and I'd learned enough about survival to recognize when to stop pushing. The third Friday, he picked me up himself. I came downstairs to find him leaning against a black sports car that probably cost more than my childhood home, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket that made him look younger, more approachable, less like a businessman, and more like danger wrapped in denim. No driver tonight? I asked, surprised. Tonight is different. He opened the passenger door, and I caught a glimpse of interior so luxurious, it looked like something from a spaceship. I want to show you something. Every instinct I had screamed danger. Getting into a car alone with him. Going somewhere without witnesses. It was stupid, reckless. The kind of decision that ended badly in every cautionary tale ever told. I got in anyway. We drove for an hour, leaving the city behind and heading into the hills where houses became estates and estates became fortresses. Dante drove fast but controlled, his hands steady on the wheel, his attention split between the road and me. Where are we going? I finally asked. Home. My stomach dropped. Your home? Our home. Eventually. He glanced at me, and there was something vulnerable in his expression, something that didn't match the ruthless businessman or the dangerous man with armed security. If you'll have it. We turned through gates that opened automatically, down a long drive lined with cypress trees, and pulled up in front of a house that made me forget how to breathe. It was massive, stone and glass and modern architecture that somehow felt timeless, lit from within, so it glowed against the darkness like a jewel. Dante, I can't. Come inside. He was already out of the car, moving around to open my door with that old-world courtesy that felt incongruous with everything else about him. Please, Sarah, just look. The interior was even more stunning. High ceilings, marble floors, furniture that looked like it belonged in museums. But what caught my attention was the subtle security. Cameras in every corner, panic buttons disguised as light switches, windows that I suspected were bulletproof. This wasn't just a house. It was a fortress. How many people have you killed? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Dante paused at the base of a sweeping staircase, his back to me. When he turned, his expression was carefully blank. Is that really what you want to know? Yes. No. I don't know. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the house's perfect temperature. I'm not stupid, Dante. The security, the money, the way people look at you. I know what you are. I just don't know if I can. I've killed 11 men. His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. 12, if you count the one who probably died later from his injuries, though I didn't stay to confirm. All of them deserved it. All of them would have killed me if I'd given them the chance. Does that answer your question? I should have run. Should have called the police. Should have done anything except stand there in his beautiful, terrible house and ask, Do you regret it? No. He moved toward me, closing the distance with predatory grace. Regret is for people who have the luxury of choice. Everything I've done, every line I've crossed, every sin I've committed, they were necessary. They made me who I am. They made me strong enough to protect what's mine. I'm not yours to protect. You keep saying that. He was close now. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. But we both know you stopped believing it after the first dinner, after the first check cleared, after you let me buy your daughter a dollhouse and clothes and everything else you were too proud to ask for but too tired to refuse. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You're mine, Sarah. You've been mine since the moment I walked into that diner and saw you pretending to be invisible. The only question now is when you'll stop fighting it. I should have pulled away, should have slapped him, should have done anything except lean into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. Why? My voice broke on the word. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm a broke single mother with more problems than solutions, and you could have anyone. I don't want anyone. His other hand came up to frame my face, holding me like I was something precious, something breakable. I want you. Your strength. Your resilience. The way you love your daughter so fiercely you'd work yourself to death for her. The way you smile at strangers even when you're exhausted. The way you're terrified of me but you're here anyway because you're brave enough to take the leap. I'm not brave. I'm desperate. You're both. And that's what makes you perfect. He leaned in, his forehead resting against mine, his breath warm against my lips. Let me give you everything, Sarah. Let me take care of you. Let me be what Marcus never was. Someone who sees your worth and refuses to let the world grind you down. The mention of my ex-husband's name was like ice water. I jerked back, and Dante let me go immediately, his hands falling to his sides. Don't. My voice shook. Don't talk about him. You don't know anything about that. I know he's a coward. Dante's voice was cold now, all the gentleness gone. I know he abandoned his wife and child. I know he hasn't paid child support in over a year. And last month he got remarried to a woman half his age who's already pregnant. The world tilted. What? You didn't know. It wasn't a question. Dante's jaw clenched. I'm sorry. I thought, how do you know that? I could barely breathe around the knife in my chest. How do you know any of that? Because I had him investigated. Because I needed to know what I was dealing with. Because... He stopped himself, visibly reining in whatever he'd been about to say. Because I wanted to understand what kind of man could walk away from you. He said no one would want me. The words came out flat, emotionless, even though something inside me was screaming. When he left, he said no one wants a single mom, that I'd trapped him with Emma, that I'd ruined his life, and now I'd have to live with the consequences alone because no decent man would ever look at me twice with someone else's kid in tow. Silence filled the vast space between us. Then Dante moved, fast and fluid, closing the distance and pulling me against his chest before I could process what was happening. His arms came around me like steel bands, holding me together when I felt like I might shatter. He was wrong. Dante's voice was low and fierce against my hair. He was a fool and a coward, and he was wrong about you. You're not ruined. You're not less because you have Emma. You're more stronger, braver, more beautiful because you love her enough to sacrifice everything for her happiness. I was crying now, silent tears that soaked into his shirt. I couldn't remember the last time someone had held me like this, like I was worth holding, like my breaking didn't make me less. I looked for you for 3 months, Dante continued, and there was something raw in his voice now, something vulnerable beneath the dangerous exterior. After I saw you the first time, I couldn't stop thinking about you, about the way you moved through that diner like you were trying not to take up space, about the sadness in your eyes that you tried to hide with smiles, about how much I wanted to be the one who made that sadness disappear. I pulled back enough to look at him, and what I saw in his face made my breath catch. Hunger and possession, and something that looked almost like reverence. This is crazy, I whispered. You're crazy. This whole thing is inevitable. He smiled, and it was sharp and possessive and made my pulse race. From the moment we met, this was inevitable. You just needed time to accept it. Accept what? That you're mine. That I'm yours. That we're going to build something together that no one can take away. His thumb traced my lower lip, and heat pooled low in my belly. That I'm going to marry you, Sarah Mitchell, and give you and Emma everything you deserve. A home, security, a family. You can't just decide that. That's not how it works. Watch me. And then he was kissing me, his mouth claiming mine with a certainty that stole my breath and my protests and every rational thought I'd ever had. I should have pushed him away, should have maintained boundaries, should have remembered that this man was dangerous, that he'd killed people, that getting involved with him was signing my death warrant. Instead, I kissed him back, his hands tangled in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, and I melted against him like I'd been made to fit there. He tasted like wine and danger and something darker I couldn't name, and when he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "Come upstairs," he said, his voice rough. "Let me show you the rest of the house. Let me show you what your life could be." Every rational thought I had screamed that this was moving too fast, that I barely knew him, that getting deeper into whatever this was would only end in disaster. But I'd been rational my whole life. I'd been careful and safe. And it had gotten me nowhere except exhausted and alone and drowning in debt. Maybe it was time to be reckless. I let him lead me upstairs, through hallways lined with art that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. He showed me room after room, guest bedrooms, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a gym that looked like something from a professional facility. And then he opened a door at the end of the hall, and I stepped into a bedroom that made my chest tight. It was clearly meant for a child, painted soft yellow with white furniture and a reading nook by the window. But what made my throat close was the dollhouse, the exact one Emma had been pointing at in store windows for months, the elaborate Victorian one with real wooden furniture and tiny working lights. It sat in the center of the room like a promise. "This could be hers," Dante said quietly from behind me. "This room. This house. Everything. All you have to do is say yes." I turned to face him, and he was watching me with an intensity that made my knees weak. Yes to what? To me. To this life. To letting me give you everything you've been too proud or too scared to accept from anyone else. He moved closer, backing me against the wall with slow, deliberate steps. "Say yes, Sarah. Stop fighting this. Stop pretending you don't feel it too." "Feel what?" His hand came up to rest against the wall beside my head, caging me in. "That we fit. That this, whatever this is between us, it's bigger than logic or reason or all your very valid fears about who I am and what I've done. That for the first time in your life, someone sees you exactly as you are and wants you anyway. Not despite your scars, but because of them. God help me. He was right. I felt it. This pull between us that defied explanation, this certainty that he was offering me something I hadn't even known I was missing. Not just security or money or escape from the grind of survival, but someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't look away. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Good. Fear means you're smart enough to understand the stakes." His free hand came up to cup my face again. That devastating gentleness that didn't match anything else about him. "But don't let fear stop you from taking what you want, from taking what you deserve." "And what do I deserve?" His smile was slow and predatory, and made heat pool between my thighs. "Everything, Sarah. You deserve everything, and I'm going to give it to you whether you think you're ready for it or not." Then he was kissing me again, pressing me against the wall with the weight of his body, one hand in my hair and the other at my waist, holding me like I might disappear if he loosened his grip. I kissed him back with a desperation I didn't know I had, pouring 3 years of loneliness and exhaustion and fear into the press of my lips against his. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, his dark eyes were nearly black with desire. "Stay," he said. And it wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't quite a request either. "Tonight, stay here with me. Let me show you what it feels like to be worshipped instead of tolerated." Every instinct I had screamed that this was too fast, too much, too dangerous. that I barely knew this man, that getting physically involved would only complicate an already impossible situation. But when I opened my mouth to say no, what came out was, "I have to pick up Emma in the morning. Mrs. Chen is expecting me by 8. Dante's smile could have lit the city. "I'll have you home by 7, my word." And because I was apparently incapable of making good decisions where this man was concerned, I nodded. He took my hand and led me down the hall to what was clearly the master suite. A massive space with a bed that could sleep 4 and windows that overlooked the city lights far below. The room was decorated in dark colors, charcoal and navy and black, masculine and expensive and somehow perfect. "I need to call Mrs. Chen," I said, suddenly nervous. "Let her know I'll be later than planned." "Of course." He pulled out his phone, one of 3 I'd seen him carry, and handed it to me. "Take your time. I'll be downstairs." He left me alone in his bedroom, and I stood there for a long moment just breathing, trying to process what I was about to do. Then I called Mrs. Chen, spinning some lie about a work emergency in a friend's couch, and tried not to think about the fact that I'd just committed to spending the night with a man who'd admitted to killing people. When I went back downstairs, I found Dante in the kitchen, a massive space with professional-grade appliances and marble countertops, pouring 2 glasses of wine. He'd taken off his jacket, and in just jeans and a black t-shirt, he looked younger, more approachable, more dangerous, because it was easier to forget what he was when he looked like this. "Hungry?" He gestured to a tray of fruit and cheese that looked like it had been professionally arranged. "A little." I took the wine glass he offered, and our fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity up my arm. We ate and drank and talked about everything and nothing. Books we'd read, places we'd traveled or wanted to travel, childhood memories carefully edited to avoid the darker truths. Dante was surprisingly easy to talk to when he wasn't being overwhelming, and I found myself relaxing despite everything. Hours passed without me noticing. Eventually I yawned, and he smiled. That real smile that transformed his face from coldly beautiful to devastating. "Tired?" "It's been a long week." I set down my wine glass. "Dante, I should probably come to bed." He stood and offered me his hand. "Just sleep, if that's what you need. But let me hold you. Let me give you one night where you're not alone." It was the not alone that broke me. Because I'd been alone for so long, even when Marcus was still there, even when I was surrounded by people at work, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone want my company for more than what I could provide. I took his hand. In his bedroom, he gave me one of his t-shirts to sleep in, soft black cotton that smelled like cedar and hung to my mid-thigh. When I came out of the bathroom, he was already in bed, shirtless, the blankets pulled back in invitation. I hesitated at the edge, and he smiled. "I don't bite, Sarah. Not unless you ask nicely." The laugh surprised me, breaking some of the tension. I slid into bed beside him, and he immediately pulled me against his chest, wrapping me in arms that felt like safety and danger in equal measure. "Sleep," he murmured against my hair. "I've got you." And despite everything, despite the warnings screaming in my head, despite knowing this man was dangerous and possessive, and had already decided I was his whether I agreed or not, I felt safe. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I fell asleep, to the steady beat of his heart and the warmth of his body against mine, and didn't wake until morning light filtered through the windows, and I realized I'd slept through the night without once jerking awake in a panic about bills, or Emma, or the 100 things that usually kept me tossing until dawn. Dante was already awake, watching me with those dark eyes, one hand stroking my hair with infinite gentleness. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning." I should have felt awkward, should have regretted spending the night. Instead, I felt content. "What time is it?" 6:30. "Plenty of time to get you home." His hand cupped my face. "But first, I need to tell you something." My stomach clenched. "What?" "Your ex-husband, Marcus." His expression went cold. "He came by the diner yesterday, looking for you." Ice flooded my veins. "What? Why?" "I don't know yet. But my people are watching him. If he comes near you or Emma, I'll know." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. "You're under my protection now, Sarah. That means no one touches you. No one hurts you. No one makes you feel small or scared, or less than you are. Do you understand? I should have argued. Should have said I could handle Marcus myself, that I didn't need a man, especially a dangerous one, fighting my battles. But the truth was, I was terrified. Marcus had been cruel when we were married, controlling and manipulative in ways I was still unpacking. If he was back, if he wanted something, okay, I whispered. Okay. Dante's smile was sharp and possessive. Good girl. Now let's get you home to your daughter. And tonight, we're moving you out of that apartment. What? Dante, no. Yes. His voice was absolute. Marcus knows where you live. He can't know where I live. Not yet. Not until I understand what he wants. So you and Emma are coming here, where it's safe, where I can protect you properly. This is crazy. This is moving too fast. It's necessary. He silenced my protest with a kiss that left me breathless. Don't fight me on this, Sarah. When it comes to your safety and Emma's, I will win every argument. You can hate me for it later, but right now, you're going to let me keep you safe. And because I was apparently completely under his spell, because the thought of Marcus knowing where we lived made my skin crawl, because some part of me wanted this, wanted to be taken care of, wanted to surrender control to someone else, wanted to believe that this dangerous, beautiful man could actually keep the monsters at bay. I nodded. Just until we figure out what Marcus wants, I said, trying to maintain some semblance of control over my rapidly spiraling life. Dante's smile told me he knew better. Of course. Just until then. But we both knew that once I moved into his fortress, once I let him wrap his protection around me and Emma like a cage made of silk and steel, I'd never leave. And the terrifying part was, I wasn't sure I wanted to. Moving happened faster than I could process. By the time Dante dropped me off at my apartment that Saturday morning, in a different car, something less conspicuous than the sports car, with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he ate nails for breakfast, there were already people waiting. Not just any people. A moving crew of 6 men who moved with military precision, packing boxes with an efficiency that suggested they'd done this before. Often. Mr. Caruso sent us, the lead guy said, handing me a business card that simply read, Caruso Enterprises with a phone number. We'll have you packed and moved by this afternoon. You just worry about your daughter. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say this was too much. Too fast. That I needed time to think. But Emma was tugging on my hand, asking about breakfast, and Mrs. Chen was knocking on the door with concerned eyes. And suddenly it was easier to just let it happen. By 3 p.m., our entire lives were packed into boxes and loaded into a truck. By 5 p.m., we were pulling through those gates and up that cypress-lined drive, and Emma was pressing her face to the window with wide, wondering eyes. Mama, is this a castle? Something like that, baby. My throat was tight. Dante met us at the door, and I watched my daughter's face transform from wonder to shy uncertainty. She pressed against my leg, suddenly timid in the face of this tall, intense stranger. But Dante, this man who killed people, who commanded fear and respect with a look, knelt down to Emma's level with a gentleness that made my chest ache. Hello, Emma. My name is Dante. Your mama has told me so much about you. Emma peeked at him from behind my leg. Are you Mama's friend? I hope to be your friend too. Would you like to see your new room? Her eyes lit up. I have a room. You have the best room in the whole house. He stood and offered Emma his hand with the same old-world courtesy he'd shown me. After a moment of hesitation, she took it. Watching him lead my daughter upstairs, his large hand completely engulfing her tiny one, his voice gentle as he pointed out paintings and sculptures, I felt something in my chest crack open. This was dangerous in a whole new way, not just falling for him myself, but watching Emma fall too. The yellow room with the dollhouse was even more perfect than I remembered. Emma gasped and ran to it, dropping to her knees to examine every tiny detail with reverent awe. It's magic, Mama. Look, the lights really work. Dante stood beside me in the doorway, his hand finding the small of my back in a touch that felt both possessive and protective. I took the liberty of having some clothes delivered for her. They're in the closet. If anything doesn't fit, or she doesn't like it, just let me know. I opened the closet to find it full. Dresses and pants and shirts in Emma's size, All expensive brands I'd only seen in store windows. Shoes lined the bottom. A winter coat hung on a child-sized hanger. "This is too much," I whispered. "It's nowhere near enough." His fingers traced small circles on my back. "Your room is next door, connected through the bathroom so you can hear her if she needs you. My room." As if I'd already decided to stay. As if the decision had been made for me. He showed me while Emma played with the dollhouse. A bedroom done in soft grays and cream, elegant and peaceful and nothing like any place I'd ever lived. The bed was enormous, covered in linens that probably cost more than my old car. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the grounds. "The bathroom connects both rooms," Dante explained, opening a door to reveal a space bigger than my old bedroom. All marble and glass with a tub that could fit 3 people. There are locks on both sides, so Emma's privacy is protected. "Where's your room?" I asked, then immediately felt stupid for asking. His smile was slow and knowing. "Down the hall. Close enough to hear if you call for me. Far enough to give you space while you adjust." He moved closer, backing me against the dresser with that predatory grace. "Though I hope you'll invite me closer soon. Dante." "I know. Too fast. Too much." His hands settled on my hips. "But I've waited 3 months for you, Sarah. 3 months of watching you from a distance, learning everything about you, wanting you until it felt like insanity. Now that I have you here, now that you're safe in my house with your daughter sleeping down the hall, do you really expect me to be patient?" "Yes." My voice came out breathless. "Emma needs stability. She needs to adjust. I need to adjust. We can't just—" "I know." He kissed my forehead, gentle despite the hunger I could feel vibrating through his body. "I'll behave. Mostly. But Sarah?" His voice dropped to a low rumble that made heat pool in my belly. "Every night you spend under my roof, every morning you wake up in my house, every meal we share together, you're getting closer to being mine completely. You know that, right?" I did. God help me. I did. That first week passed in a surreal blur. Dante worked from home most days. Conducting business from an office on the first floor that I learned quickly was off limits. Men came and went. Hard-eyed men with concealed weapons and the same predatory awareness that Dante had. They looked at me with curiosity and Emma with surprising gentleness. But I never forgot what they were. Soldiers. That's what Dante called them. But I knew what they really were. Emma adjusted faster than I expected. The private grounds became her playground, supervised by a rotating security detail who seemed genuinely charmed by my 3-year-old's endless questions and imaginative games. Dante installed a swing set behind the house, had a sandbox built, ordered toys I'd never been able to afford. And every night, we had dinner together. The 3 of us, like a family. It was during the second week that everything changed. I was in the kitchen with Maria, the housekeeper who'd appeared on day 3, and immediately started teaching me to cook things I'd only ever seen on cooking shows, when Dante's phone rang. Not the one he usually carried, but one of the others. The one that made his expression go cold and flat. He answered in Italian, his voice low and hard, and even without understanding the words, I could hear the threat in them. When he hung up, his jaw was clenched tight. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Marcus is making moves, asking questions about you, about where you went." He pocketed the phone and turned to face me fully. "It's time you told me everything about him, Sarah. Not just the divorce. Everything." So I did. I told him about meeting Marcus in college, about how charming he'd been at first, about the way that charm had slowly curdled into control, monitoring my phone, my clothes, my friends. About how he'd insisted I quit school when I got pregnant, how he'd isolated me from everyone who cared about me, about the night he'd hit me for the first time, and my face had burned with shame admitting it. About how he'd cried after, swore it would never happen again. Blamed stress and money problems and my supposed nagging, about how it had happened again and again. Until I'd learned to be silent, to be small, to try desperately to be perfect enough that he wouldn't have a reason, about finding out he'd been cheating for over a year with a woman from his office. About how he'd blamed me for that too. said I'd let myself go after Emma, that I was boring, that any man would have strayed, about how he'd simply left one day while I was at work, taking half our money and leaving divorce papers on the kitchen table with a note that said I'd trapped him and he was done being responsible for my mistakes. Dante listened in silence, but I could see the rage building in him. A cold, controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. His hands clenched and unclenched on the table, and when I finished, he stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders rigid. "Why didn't you fight for child support? Press charges for the assault?" I tried. His family has money, not like yours, but enough for good lawyers. They made me look like a liar, like I was just trying to extort him. The judge said there wasn't enough evidence. My voice cracked. And the child support, he just stopped paying, moved to another state. I couldn't afford a lawyer to chase him. And legal aid said it would take years to even get a hearing. He left you with nothing. It wasn't a question. He left me with Emma. That's everything. Dante turned back to me, and what I saw in his face made my breath catch. Not just anger, but something deeper, a protective fury that promised violence. "He's never touching you again," Dante said softly. "He's never getting close enough to hurt you or Emma. I'll make sure of it." "What are you going to do?" What I should have done the moment I learned about him. He pulled out his phone, the business one this time, and made a call. "Find Marcus Webb. I want to know where he lives, where he works, who he talks to, what he eats for breakfast. Everything. And I want it by tonight." He hung up and came back to me, cupping my face with both hands. "Trust me, Sarah. Trust that I can keep you safe, that I can end this. I don't want you to kill him." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Emma. She doesn't know him, but he's still her father. I don't want her to grow up knowing I won't kill him. Not unless he forces my hand." Dante's thumb traced my cheekbone. "But I will make sure he never bothers you again. That he pays back every cent of support he owes. That he understands exactly what happens to men who hurt what's mine." There it was again. That possessive declaration that should have terrified me, but instead made me feel safe. That night, after Emma was asleep and the house had gone quiet, I found Dante in his office. The door was slightly ajar, an invitation I hadn't expected. He sat behind a massive desk, papers spread before him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression softened. "Can't sleep? Too much in my head." I closed the door behind me and moved into the room, taking in details I'd missed before. Bookshelves lined with volumes in multiple languages. Art that was beautiful and expensive, and somehow cold. A wall safe barely visible behind a painting. And on his desk, a file folder with my name on it. "Is that information on Marcus? Want to see?" I shouldn't have. Should have maintained some distance, some boundary between Dante's world and mine. But curiosity won out. I moved around the desk, and he pulled me down to sit on his lap, his arm settling around my waist like it belonged there. The file was thorough, frighteningly so. Marcus's new address in Portland, his job at a tech startup, his new wife's name, birthday, social security number, bank statements showing exactly how much money he had and where it came from. "He's been getting bonuses," I said, staring at the numbers. "Big ones, while claiming he couldn't afford to pay child support." "I know." Dante's voice was cold. "His accounts will be frozen by morning. The IRS will be receiving an anonymous tip about unreported income, and he'll be served with papers demanding he pay every cent he owes, plus interest and legal fees." "You can do that?" "I can do anything, Sarah." His hand tightened on my waist. "The question is whether you'll let me." I should have said no. Should have insisted on handling this through proper legal channels, even though those channels had failed me before. Should have maintained some independence, some control over my own life. Instead, I turned in his lap and kissed him. He responded immediately, his hands coming up to tangle in my hair, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that had been building for 2 weeks. I kissed him back with everything I had. Gratitude and fear and want, and something deeper I wasn't ready to name. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, His dark eyes were nearly black with desire. "Tell me to stop," he said roughly. "Tell me you're not ready, and I'll walk away right now. I'll be patient. I'll wait as long as you need." But I'd been patient my whole life. I'd been careful and controlled, and it had gotten me nowhere except hurt and alone. "Don't stop," I whispered. "Please, Dante, don't stop." He stood with me still in his arms, carrying me with effortless strength, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he kissed me again. We made it as far as the leather couch before patience ran out. Later, tangled together in the aftermath, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare skin, he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." My stomach clenched. "What?" "Marcus isn't just asking questions because he's curious where you went. He's in debt. Bad debt, to bad people. He thinks you might have family money he can access, or that he can use Emma to get leverage for more child support." Ice flooded my veins. "He wants Emma?" "He wants what she represents, a way to extract money he thinks you're hiding." Dante's arm tightened around me. "But here's what he doesn't know. The man he owes money to works for me. 3 levels down in my organization, but mine nonetheless. Which means Marcus's debt is now my leverage." "I don't understand." "It means I own him, Sarah. He does what I say, or the people he owes destroy him. And what I'm going to say is very simple. Stay away from you and Emma, pay every cent of child support he owes, and disappear from your lives forever. And if he doesn't..." Dante's smile was cold. "Then I'll let nature take its course. The people Marcus owes aren't forgiving. They'll make his life very unpleasant, very quickly. And if that doesn't work..." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. I should have been horrified. Should have been disgusted by this casual discussion of manipulation and threats. Should have remembered that the man holding me had killed people, that he was offering to destroy someone's life with the same ease other people ordered coffee. Instead, I felt only relief. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me for protecting what's mine." He kissed my forehead, gentle despite the violence in his words. "It's not kindness, Sarah. It's pure selfishness. I want you happy, safe, free to be who you should have been all along, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen." We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, and I tried not to think about how completely I'd surrendered to this dangerous man's protection, how thoroughly I'd walked into the cage he'd built for me, how much I didn't want to leave. The next morning, everything exploded. I woke to shouting, Dante's voice raised in fury, something I'd never heard before. I threw on clothes and ran downstairs to find him in the foyer, facing a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. She was beautiful, tall and elegant, with honey blonde hair, and the kind of bone structure that suggested old money. Her designer dress probably cost more than 6 months of my old rent, and she wore it with the casual confidence of someone who'd never worried about money a day in her life. "You can't just cut me off, Dante!" She was shouting, her voice shrill with anger. "We had an agreement. We had an arrangement that ended when you violated its terms." Dante's voice was cold, controlled, but I could see the fury in the rigid set of his shoulders. "You knew the rules, Vanessa. You broke them anyway." "By doing what? Talking to a few people? Networking? That's not..." "By discussing my business with your father's associates. By trying to leverage our relationship into information you could sell." His voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Vanessa's eyes darted past Dante and landed on me, standing frozen on the stairs. Her expression transformed from anger to calculation, to something cold and cruel. "Oh." Her laugh was sharp. "Oh, this is rich. You replaced me with her?" She looked me up and down, and I felt every one of my inadequacies under that contemptuous gaze. "A little broke, aren't we? A little common? Does she even know what you are, Dante? What you do? Leave." Dante's voice was absolute. "Now, before I have you removed." "She has a kid, doesn't she? I did my research too." Vanessa's smile was vicious. "How sweet. Dante Caruso, ruthless crime lord, playing house with a single mom and her bastard daughter. Your father must be rolling in his grave." Dante moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was standing by the door. The next he had Vanessa by the throat, slamming her back against the wall with controlled violence. "You don't speak about them," he said quietly. And the calm in his voice was more terrifying than any shout. "You don't look at them. You don't think about them. They are mine, which means they're protected by everything I am and everything I control. Do you understand?" Vanessa's face was pale, her hands clawing uselessly at his wrist. She managed a jerky nod. Dante released her, and she slumped against the wall, gasping. "If I ever see you near my home again, if I ever hear you've spoken about Sarah or Emma to anyone, I will end you. Not quickly, not cleanly. I will take everything you have and everyone you love, and I will destroy them in front of you before I finally let you die. Are we clear?" "Yes." It came out strangled. "Get out." Vanessa fled, and the front door slammed behind her. In the silence that followed, Dante stood with his back to me, his shoulders heaving, hands clenched into fists. "Dante?" My voice came out small. He turned, and what I saw in his face made my heart stop. Not anger, but fear. Raw and vulnerable, and completely at odds with the violence he'd just displayed. "I'm sorry." He moved toward me slowly, like he was afraid I'd run. "I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry she said those things about Emma. I'm sorry." I kissed him, rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his, cutting off the apologies I didn't need. When I pulled back, his dark eyes were wide with surprise. "She called Emma a bastard," I said quietly. "You defended her. You threatened someone for her. Do you know how long I've waited for someone to do that? To treat her like she matters. She does matter. You both do." His hands came up to cut my face. "You matter more than anything. Who was she?" "Someone I was seeing before I met you. An arrangement. Nothing more. She needed the connection to my name. I needed arm candy for business functions. It was never serious." His jaw clenched. "She was supposed to be gone before you moved in. I didn't expect her to show up here. Is she dangerous? To us?" "No." His voice was absolute. "She knows what I'll do if she talks. And her father knows better than to cross me. He needs my goodwill more than I need his. She'll disappear back to whatever hole she crawled out of, and we'll never see her again." But even as he said it, I saw something flicker across his face. Doubt, maybe, or concern. "What aren't you telling me?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Her father is a federal prosecutor. She has connections to law enforcement, to judges, to people who could make my life difficult if they wanted to look too closely at my business. Throwing her out like this, humiliating her, it might have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind where I need to be very careful for a while, where my movements are restricted, my business is scrutinized, where I have to call in favors I'd rather keep in reserve." He pulled me against his chest, and I could feel his heart racing. "Where I might need to keep you and Emma even more protected than you already are. We're already living in a fortress." "I know. But it might not be enough." His arms tightened around me. "I might need to send you somewhere safer. Somewhere she and her father can't reach." "No." I pulled back to look at him. "No. You're not sending us away. If you're in danger because of us, I'm in danger because I'm me, because of what I do, because I've made enemies my whole life." He stroked my hair. "You and Emma are the only good things I have, Sarah. The only pure things in a very dark world. If keeping you safe means sending you away for a while, I'll do it, even if it kills me." "No, then don't make enemies of prosecutors by throwing their daughters into walls." His laugh was short and bitter. "Too late for that. The moment I chose you over her, over the safe political connection she represented, I made that choice, and I don't regret it. I won't ever regret choosing you." We stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the foyer of his fortress, and I felt the walls of his world closing in around us, the danger I'd been trying not to think about. The consequences of loving a man who lived in shadows and violence. "What do?" I finally whispered. "We adapt. We survive. We protect what matters." He kissed my forehead. "And we get married." My heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me, Sarah." He pulled back to look at me, and his expression was fierce. "Not because you owe me, Not because you're grateful, but because I love you, and I want you to be mine in every way that matters. Because I want Emma to have my name and my protection legally, not just practically. Because I want the world to know you're untouchable. Dante, that's too fast. I know. But we don't have time for slow anymore. Vanessa knows about you now. Her father will know soon if he doesn't already. Other enemies will start circling, looking for weakness. The only way to protect you completely is to make you family, my wife. Legally mine. You're asking me to marry you because it's strategically convenient? I'm asking you to marry me because I've been carrying a ring in my pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment, and apparently, right moments don't exist in my world. He pulled out a small box from his jacket, and my breath caught. The ring inside was beautiful. A simple solitaire diamond on a platinum band, elegant and understated and somehow perfect. Not too flashy, not trying to compensate or impress. Just beautiful. I was going to do this properly, he said softly. Take you somewhere romantic, get down on one knee, say something poetic about forever. He laughed, bitter. But my life doesn't allow for romance or poetry. It allows for protection and possession, and doing whatever it takes to keep what's mine safe. So this is about ownership? No. He took the ring from the box and held it between us. This is about love. About wanting to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. About wanting to watch Emma grow up and maybe give her siblings someday. About building something real in the middle of all this darkness. The protection is just a bonus. I stared at the ring, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. This was insane. I'd known him for less than a month. We'd slept together once. Emma had met him 2 weeks ago, but I'd also never felt safer than I did in his fortress. Never felt more seen than when he looked at me. Never felt more valued than when he defended me and my daughter with violence and certainty. And somewhere along the way, between the dinners and the protection, and the way he looked at Emma like she was precious, I'd fallen in love with him too. Yes, I whispered. His eyes widened. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll let you give Emma your name. Yes, I'll be yours in every way that matters. My voice grew stronger. But Dante, it goes both ways. You're mine too, which means no more women showing up at the door claiming prior arrangements. No more keeping me in the dark about danger. We're partners, or this doesn't work. His smile was fierce and possessive and made my knees weak. He slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, of course, because he'd probably had my finger measured while I slept. And then he was kissing me, backing me against the stairs, claiming me with a certainty that promised forever. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Partners, he agreed, in everything, for always. And as I stood there in the foyer of his fortress with his ring on my finger and his arms around me, I knew I'd made my choice. I'd stepped fully into the cage, let it close around me with bars made of diamonds and protection and dangerous love. But unlike every other cage I'd been in, this one didn't feel like prison. It felt like coming home. The wedding happened faster than seemed possible, but I was learning that when Dante Caruso decided something would happen, the world bent to accommodate him. 3 days after I said yes, we stood in the living room of his fortress with a judge who owed Dante favors I didn't want to know about, and I became Sarah Caruso in a ceremony that lasted less than 10 minutes. I wore a cream-colored dress that had appeared in my closet that morning. Simple, elegant, perfectly fitted, because of course Dante had my measurements. Emma stood beside me in a white flower girl dress, clutching a bouquet of daisies and looking confused but happy. Dante wore black, as always, but this time with a white rose in his lapel that matched the bouquet he'd given me. When the judge pronounced us married and Dante kissed me, it felt both completely surreal and more real than anything else in my life. You're mine now, he whispered against my lips. Legally, completely, forever. We're each other's, I corrected, and his smile was fierce with approval. The paperwork was already prepared. Not just marriage certificates, but adoption papers for Emma. My daughter would have his name, his protection, his everything. When I signed my name on those documents, my hand trembled. Are you sure? I asked him quietly, while the judge prepared the final papers. Taking on someone else's child, that's a big commitment. Dante looked at Emma, who was examining the enormous cake that had appeared on the dining room table, completely absorbed in counting the layers. His expression softened in a way I'd only seen when he looked at her. She's not someone else's child anymore. She's ours. Mine. He turned back to me. I know what it's like to grow up feeling like you don't quite belong anywhere, Sarah. Emma will never feel that way. She'll know she's wanted, protected, loved. She'll have every advantage my name and money can provide. And when she's old enough to understand what you do, what you are, then we'll tell her the truth. Age appropriately. His jaw clenched. I won't lie to her, but I'll make damn sure she understands that everything I do, every line I cross, it's to keep our family safe. Our family. The words settled into my chest like a warm weight. That night, after Emma was asleep and the judge had left with an envelope I deliberately didn't look at, Dante and I stood on the balcony of the master bedroom. Our bedroom now, my things having been moved in that afternoon while we were dealing with paperwork. No honeymoon? I asked, leaning against the railing and looking out at the city lights. Not yet. Not until things settle with Vanessa's father and Marcus is properly handled. He moved behind me, his arms coming around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. But when we do go, I'm taking you somewhere with white sand beaches and water so blue it doesn't look real. Somewhere Emma can build sand castles and you can finally relax. That sounds like a dream. It's a promise. He pressed a kiss to my neck, and I shivered. I'm going to give you everything, Mrs. Caruso. Everything you've been denied, everything you deserve, everything you've been too proud or too scared to ask for. I turned in his arms to face him. What if I don't want everything? What if I just want this? You, Emma, safety, peace. Then that's what you'll have. His hands framed my face, but peace is going to be hard-won, Sarah. My world doesn't allow for it easily. There are people who'll see you and Emma as weaknesses to exploit, as leverage to use against me. I know. Vanessa made that clear. His expression darkened. Vanessa is handled. Her father received certain information today. Nothing illegal. Just professionally embarrassing. Enough to make him understand that pursuing any investigation into my business would be unwise. And Vanessa herself has been convinced to take an extended vacation in Europe. She won't be bothering us. How did you convince her? I bought her father's mortgage, and his car loans, and the loans for his beach house. Dante's smile was cold. Amazing how cooperative people become when you own their debt. One word from me, and he loses everything he's spent 30 years building. I should have been horrified by how casually he discussed financial manipulation and coercion. Instead, I just felt relieved. And Marcus received a visit this morning from associates of mine. Very professional, very clear. He's agreed to pay back child support. $100,000 will be transferred to an account in your name by the end of the week. He's also signed documents relinquishing all parental rights to Emma, making the adoption clean and final. My throat tightened. Just like that? He just gave her up? He was given a choice. Sign the papers and clear his debts, or don't sign and face the consequences of those debts with people far less patient than me. Dante's voice was matter-of-fact. He chose self-preservation, as I knew he would. Cowards always do. He never wanted her anyway. It hurt less than it should have, maybe because I'd already grieved the father Emma would never have, or maybe because I was looking at the father she'd have instead. Flawed and dangerous, but devoted in a way Marcus never was. His loss is my gain. Dante pulled me closer. I get to be the one who teaches her to ride a bike, who scares away her first boyfriend, who walks her down the aisle someday. I get to be dad. The casual way he said it, like it was already decided, like he'd already planned out Emma's entire future in his mind, made my chest ache. She's going to love you so much. I already love her. Simple, direct, true. She's yours, which makes her mine. It's that simple. Nothing about this situation was simple, but I didn't argue. Instead, I kissed him, and he carried me inside to our bedroom, and we celebrated our marriage the way newlyweds should, with passion and possessiveness and promises whispered in the dark. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if you ignored the armed guards and the fortress walls and the occasional tense phone call that sent Dante into his office for hours. Emma started preschool at an exclusive private academy, where tuition cost more than my old yearly salary. She made friends immediately, of course she did. My daughter had never met a stranger, and came home every day chattering about art class and story time, and her new best friend Sophia, who had a pony. "Can I have a pony, Papa?" Emma asked Dante over dinner one night, and my heart stopped at the casual way she'd started calling him that. Neither of us had pushed it, but somewhere in the past week, she'd decided on her own that he was Papa now. Dante didn't even hesitate. "We'll need to build stables first, and hire someone to take care of it. But yes, Piccola, you can have a pony." "Dante," I protested. "You can't just buy her a pony. Why not? We have the land. She wants one." He looked genuinely confused by my objection, and I realized with a jolt that this was how he'd been raised. Want something. Get it. No questions about cost or practicality. Because that's not how parenting works. You can't give her everything she asks for. Watch me. But he was smiling, and when Emma squealed and launched herself at him for a hug, he caught her easily and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I was fighting a losing battle, and I knew it. But watching them together, watching my daughter finally have a father who doted on her, who made her feel safe and valued and loved, it was worth losing that particular fight. That night, after Emma was asleep, I found Dante in his office again. He looked tired, more tired than I'd seen him since we met. Papers were spread across his desk, and 3 phones sat within reach, one of them buzzing insistently. "What's wrong?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and something in his expression made my stomach clench. "Come in, close the door." I did, my heart starting to race. "Dante, you're scaring me. I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm." He stood and came around the desk, taking my hands in his. "There's a problem. A bigger one than Vanessa or Marcus." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the FBI has been asking questions about my business operations, where they're building a case that could bring down half my organization." His jaw clenched. "Where they're specifically asking about large cash transactions in the past month, like the $50,000 I gave you." Ice flooded my veins. "They think I'm involved? In whatever you do? They think you're leverage, a way to get to me." He pulled me against his chest. "But here's what they don't know. My lawyers are better than their investigators. Every transaction is documented, legal, explainable. The money I gave you was a gift, properly reported to the IRS. Our marriage is legal. Emma's adoption is legal. They have nothing to use against us, but they're looking. They're always looking, Sarah. This is my life. Constant scrutiny, constant threat, constantly being one step ahead of people who want to take me down." His arms tightened around me. "But I've been doing this for 15 years. I know how to protect what's mine." "What do? We live our lives. We don't change our routine, don't act suspicious, don't give them anything they can use. You take Emma to school, you go shopping, you be the perfect wealthy wife living her perfect wealthy life. And I handle the lawyers and the investigators and make sure they find nothing. And if they do find something," his expression went cold, "then I have contingencies, assets hidden in places they can't touch. People who owe me favors, escape routes if necessary." He cupped my face. "But it won't come to that. I promise you, Sarah, I will not let them take me away from you and Emma. Whatever I have to do, whatever lines I have to cross, I will keep our family together." I believed him. God help me. I believed him completely. The FBI came 3 days later. I was in the kitchen with Maria, learning to make fresh pasta, a normal domestic morning that shattered when Dante's head of security burst in with 2 agents in dark suits behind him. "Mrs. Caruso?" The female agent was young, blonde, pretty in a severe way. "I'm Special Agent Morrison. This is Special Agent Chen. We'd like to ask you a few questions." My mouth went dry. "About what?" "About your husband's business activities. About large cash transactions. About how a waitress living paycheck to paycheck suddenly started making luxury purchases." Her smile was sharp. "We can do this here, or we can do it at our office. Your choice." She's not answering anything without a lawyer present. Dante appeared in the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. And you're on private property without a warrant. Leave, now. We're just having a friendly conversation, Mr. Caruso. Agent Chen was older, calm, but his eyes were hard. Unless there's a reason your wife shouldn't talk to us, the reason is the Fifth Amendment and basic common sense. Dante moved to stand beside me, his hand settling on my lower back. Sarah, don't say anything. Not one word. Protective, isn't he? Morrison's smile widened. Makes you wonder what he's protecting you from. Or what he's scared you'll tell us. I'm protecting her from agents who twist words and manipulate statements to build cases against innocent people. Dante's voice was cold. My wife has done nothing wrong. She's guilty of nothing except marrying me. Interesting that you didn't deny doing anything wrong yourself. Chen pulled out a business card and set it on the counter. Mrs. Caruso, if you want to talk, when you're ready to hear the truth about who you married, call me. We can offer protection, relocation, immunity for any crimes you've been coerced into participating in. Get out. Dante's voice was soft, deadly. Get out of my house before I call my lawyers and have you brought up on charges of harassment. The agents left, but Morrison paused in the doorway. He's killed people, Mrs. Caruso. Did he tell you that? 11 men that we know of, probably more. Is that really who you want raising your daughter? The door closed behind them, and silence filled the kitchen. Maria had disappeared at some point, leaving us alone. Sarah, Dante started. Is it true? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 11 men? Yes. No hesitation, no attempt to soften it. I told you that already, on our third date. I know. I pressed my hands to my face. Having FBI agents say it out loud makes it real in a different way. Do you want to leave? The question was quiet, and when I looked up, I saw vulnerability in his face. If you want to take Emma and go, I'll arrange it. Money, protection, a new identity if necessary. I won't stop you. Would you come with us? I can't. My life is here. My business, my responsibilities, the people who depend on me. But I'd make sure you were safe, that you had everything you needed. His voice cracked slightly, even if it killed me to let you go. I thought about Agent Morrison's offer. Protection, relocation, immunity. A chance to start over, to raise Emma away from armed guards and FBI investigations, and a husband who admitted to killing people. A chance to go back to being invisible, struggling, alone. No, I said finally. Dante's eyes widened. No? No, I'm not leaving. No, I don't want protection from you. No, I don't want to hear their version of the truth because I already know the truth. I moved closer to him. The truth is, you saved me. You saw me when I was invisible. You gave Emma a father who loves her. You made us safe when we were drowning. Yes, you've done terrible things. Yes, you're dangerous. But you're dangerous to people who threaten what you love, and that includes us now, Sarah. I'm not naive, Dante. I know who you are, what you are. And I'm choosing you anyway. I'm choosing this life, this family, this fortress with its armed guards and its secrets. I took his face in my hands. So whatever the FBI wants, whatever case they're building, we face it together, as husband and wife, as partners. His kiss was desperate, grateful, possessive all at once. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. That afternoon, lawyers descended on the house, expensive men in expensive suits, who spoke in careful legal language about exposure and liability and strategic options. They interviewed me for 3 hours, preparing me for possible depositions, teaching me exactly what to say and what not to say if the FBI came back. The key is, you knew nothing about Mr. Caruso's business operations before your marriage, the lead lawyer explained. You were a waitress he met by chance. He courted you, gave you gifts. All legal, all properly documented. You married for love. You know only what any wife would know, that her husband is a successful businessman with import-export operations. Import-export of what? I asked. Don't ask questions you don't want answered, Mrs. Caruso. His smile was thin. Plausible deniability is your friend. By the time they left, My head was spinning and I felt sick to my stomach, but I also felt prepared. Whatever came next, I wouldn't be the weak link in Dante's defenses. That night, Emma had nightmares. She woke up crying, calling for me, and I found her tangled in blankets and sobbing about monsters in the closet. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Mama's here." I held her while she cried. "The scary people," she sobbed. "The scary people in our house. Are they going to take you away?" My heart broke. She'd seen the FBI agents. Of course she had. Nothing in this house escaped notice. "No one's taking me anywhere." I smoothed her hair. "Mama's staying right here with you. Promise?" "I promise." It felt like the most important promise I'd ever made. Dante appeared in the doorway, and Emma's face lit up even through her tears. "Papa, I had bad dreams." "I know, Piccola. I heard." He came in and sat on the bed, and Emma immediately crawled into his lap, seeking the safety his presence represented. "Want to know a secret about monsters?" Emma nodded against his chest. "They're scared of papas who love their little girls very much. One look from me, and they run away screaming."
He tickled her gently, and she giggled through her tears. "So anytime you're scared, you call for Papa, and I'll chase all the monsters away, even the scary people who came today?" His expression went hard for a brief second before softening again. "Especially them. No one scares my girls. No one." We stayed like that for a while, the three of us crowded on Emma's bed, until she fell back asleep between us. Dante carried her back to her own bed, tucking her in with a gentleness that never failed to surprise me. In the hallway, away from Emma's room, I whispered, "She saw the agents. She's scared. I know. And I'm going to make sure she never has to see anything like that again." His voice was hard. "The investigation ends now, whatever it takes." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago." He pulled out his phone. Not one of the usual 3, but a 4th one I'd never seen before. "Call in every favor I'm owed. Remind certain people that their careers exist because I allow them to. Make it very clear that investigating me further would be professionally and personally unwise." That sounds like threats. It is threats. "Welcome to my world, Sarah. This is how things get done." He made the call, speaking in low tones that I couldn't quite hear, and I stood there wondering what line I'd just watched him cross, wondering if there were any lines left, or if we'd already crossed them all. The investigation quietly died 3 days later. No charges filed, no warrants issued, no more agents at our door. Dante never told me what he'd done, or who he'd threatened, or what it had cost him, and I didn't ask. Some things, I was learning, were better left unknown. But life didn't go back to normal, because normal in our world meant constant vigilance against the next threat, and the next threat came from an unexpected direction. Marcus showed up at Emma's preschool. I got the call from Dante while I was shopping for groceries. Something mundane and normal that felt obscene given what he was saying. "Where are you?" His voice was tight with controlled fury. "The market. Why? What's wrong?" Marcus tried to take Emma from school. My security stopped him, but he's making a scene, claiming parental rights, threatening to call the police. A pause. "I'm handling it, but you need to get home. Now." I abandoned my cart and ran to the car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The drive home was a blur of panic and rage and terror so intense I thought I might vomit. When I pulled up to the house, Dante's car was already there, and through the windows I could see Emma sitting in the living room with Maria, eating cookies and watching cartoons, apparently unaware that anything was wrong. I found Dante in his office with Marcus. My ex-husband looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown beyond the person he'd once controlled. He was thinner, his suit cheaper than it used to be, his hair showing more gray, but his expression was the same, entitled, aggrieved, certain that the world owed him something. "Sarah." He stood when I entered. "Thank God. Tell your thug husband to let me see my daughter." "She's not your daughter anymore." My voice was ice. "You signed papers. You gave up your rights. I was coerced, threatened." He gestured at Dante. "By him and his criminals. Those papers aren't legal." "They're perfectly legal." Dante's voice was quiet, deadly. "You signed them willingly, in front of witnesses,
After consulting with an attorney, I provided for you. No coercion necessary. You were eager enough when I offered to clear your debts. You can't buy my daughter. I didn't buy her. I adopted her. There's a difference. Dante moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine. And more importantly, her mother chose me. Emma chose me. You're the one who walked away, remember? You're the one who said no one would want a single mom. Marcus's face flushed red. I was angry. You were cruel. I found my voice, steady despite the rage vibrating through me. You abandoned us. You hurt me, neglected Emma, refused to pay support while you remarried and started a new family. You don't get to show up now and claim you want her back. I have rights. You have nothing. Dante's voice cut through Marcus's protest like a knife. No rights, no claim, no leverage. The papers you signed are ironclad. Emma is legally my daughter now, and if you ever come near her again, if you ever try to contact her or Sarah, if you even think about them too loudly, I will destroy you. Not financially this time. I'll let the people you owe destroy you. And they will. Slowly. Painfully. Do you understand? Marcus paled. You can't. I can. I will. Dante pulled out his phone and made a call. It's me. Remember that debt we cleared for Marcus Webb? Reinstate it. With interest. He's violated our agreement. He hung up and smiled at Marcus, cold and terrible. You have about 24 hours before they come looking for you. I suggest you leave town, change your name, disappear. Because if I ever see you again, if you ever make Sarah or Emma feel unsafe for even a moment, there won't be enough left of you to identify. Marcus looked at me, and I saw desperation in his face. Sarah, please. I'm her father. No, I said quietly. You were her father. Now you're nothing. Just a man who made bad choices and has to live with the consequences. Leave, Marcus. Don't come back. Security escorted him out, and I watched through the window as they put him in a car and drove him away. My hands were shaking, my breath coming in short gasps, and suddenly Dante was there, pulling me against his chest. It's over. He murmured against my hair. He's gone. He won't be back. You really reinstated his debt, every cent. He violated our agreement when he came after Emma. Now he pays the price. His arms tightened around me. No one threatens our family, Sarah. No one. That night, I held Emma extra close while reading her bedtime story. She was oblivious to how close she'd come to being taken, chattering about her day and the art project she'd made, and could she please have that pony soon because Sophia's pony was so pretty. Soon, baby. I kissed her forehead. Papa's working on it. Papa's the best. She yawned, snuggling into her blankets. I'm glad you married him, Mama. He makes you smile. My throat tightened. He does, doesn't he? And he keeps the monsters away. Her eyes were already drifting closed. Love you, Mama. Love you too, sweetheart. I found Dante on our balcony, staring out at the city lights with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue, and everything to do with the weight of keeping us safe. Thank you, I said quietly, moving to stand beside him. For what? For protecting her. For making him go away. For being the father she deserves. I took his free hand. For being everything I needed but was too scared to ask for. He set down the glass and pulled me against him. And we stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the city sprawled below us, and our daughter slept safe in her bed. No more threats, he finally said. I've handled Marcus, silenced the FBI investigation, dealt with Vanessa. We're clear, for now. For now? There will always be something, Sarah. New threats, new challenges, new people who see our happiness as weakness to exploit. That's the price of this life. He pulled back to look at me. But I promise you this, whatever comes, we face it together, as a family, and I will always, always keep you both safe. I believed him. Not because I was naive, not because I'd been brainwashed or coerced, but because I'd watched him prove it over and over again in the past month. This was my life now, not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd expected, but the one I'd chosen. A fortress with armed guards. A husband who killed to protect what was his. A daughter who called him Papa and felt safe for the first time in her life. A cage, maybe, but a golden one, built from love and violence and the unshakable certainty that Dante Caruso would burn down the world before he let anyone hurt his family. And as I kissed him there on the balcony while the city lights sparkled below us, I realized I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for freedom, not for simplicity, not for the invisible, struggling life I'd left behind. This was where I belonged, in his arms, in his fortress, in his dangerous, beautiful world. Home. 6 months later, I stood in the nursery Dante had built. Soft sage green walls, white furniture, a rocking chair positioned to catch the morning light. My hand rested on my swollen belly, feeling the flutter of movement that still amazed me every single time. Babies kicking? Dante appeared in the doorway, and even after all these months, the sight of him still made my breath catch. He'd shed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and there was paint on his hands from helping Emma with her art project downstairs. Like she's training for soccer. I smiled as he crossed the room and placed his large hand over mine, waiting patiently until our daughter kicked again. His face lit up with wonder. Strong. Like her mother. He kissed my temple. How are you feeling? Tired, huge, ready to meet her but also terrified. I leaned back against him. Is that normal? According to the 17 parenting books I've read, completely normal. His arms came around me carefully, cradling both me and our unborn daughter. 3 more weeks. Then she's here. 3 weeks. 3 weeks until we met the daughter we'd made together, the little girl who'd be born into safety and luxury and love. Everything Emma and I had been denied before Dante. The past 6 months had been a revelation. After Marcus disappeared, truly disappeared, leaving Portland without a forwarding address, life had settled into something almost peaceful. The FBI investigation had dried up completely, though Dante's lawyers kept careful watch for any resurgence. Vanessa had married some European nobleman and sent a wedding announcement that Dante burned without reading. Emma had thrived. Her vocabulary had exploded, her confidence had bloomed, and she'd become the kind of child who believed the world was safe and good, because in her world, it was. The pony, a gentle mare named Buttercup, lived in newly built stables with a full-time groom. Emma took riding lessons twice a week and talked endlessly about horse shows and competitions. Papa, Mama. Speaking of Emma, her voice echoed up the stairs. Come see, I finished my painting. We found her in what Dante called the art studio, but was really just a room he'd converted so Emma could make as much mess as she wanted. She stood in front of an easel, covered in paint, beaming with pride at the canvas before her. It was abstract. Swirls of color that might have been a family, or might have been her interpretation of a rainbow. But in the center, clear as day, were 4 stick figures. 1 tall man, 1 shorter woman with a round belly, 1 little girl, and 1 tiny baby. It's us, Emma announced. Our family, see? That's Papa and Mama with baby sister, and me, and baby Sophia. Sophia. We'd told Emma the name 2 weeks ago, and she'd immediately claimed her future sister as her personal responsibility. It's beautiful, Piccola. Dante crouched down to Emma's level, apparently unconcerned about the paint she was transferring to his expensive clothes as she hugged him. Should we frame it? Put it in the living room? Really? Emma's eyes went wide. Really, it's a masterpiece. He kissed the top of her head, and my chest ached with how much I loved this. Them, us, the family we'd become. That afternoon, while Emma napped and Dante worked in his office, I found myself in our bedroom, looking through the closet that had once held only my things, and now held maternity clothes and baby supplies, and the physical evidence of how completely my life had transformed. My phone buzzed with a text from Carla, my old co-worker from the diner. We'd kept in sporadic contact, though I'd been careful about what I shared. Saw Marcus's wife's Instagram. She's pregnant again. Did you know? I stared at the message for a long moment, waiting for the stab of pain or jealousy or something. It didn't come. Marcus was part of a past so distant it felt like it had happened to someone else. That scared, exhausted woman in the grease-stained apron. I could barely remember being her. Good for them. I typed back. Hope he's better to this one. Are you happy? Carla asked. Really happy? Your life seems so different now. I thought about that. About the fortress and the guards and the husband who'd killed people, about the FBI investigation and the threats, and the constant awareness that danger lurked at the edges of our perfect life. About Emma calling Dante Papa with complete trust, about the daughter growing inside me who'd never know poverty or fear or what it felt like to be invisible. About waking up every morning next to a man who looked at me like I was his entire world. Really happy, I typed. For the first time in my life. It was true. And that truth was worth everything it had cost. That evening, Dante surprised me with dinner. Not the elaborate affairs we usually had, but something simple. He'd sent Maria home early and cooked himself. Pasta carbonara, crusty bread, a salad with vegetables from the garden he'd had planted, because I'd mentioned once that I missed fresh tomatoes. What's the occasion? I asked as he pulled out my chair. Do I need an occasion to cook for my wife? But his smile was secretive. We ate while Emma chattered about her day, about Buttercup, about her friend Sophia's upcoming birthday party. After dinner, Dante declared it movie night, and we all piled onto the enormous living room couch. Emma between us, my head on Dante's shoulder, his arm around both of us. Emma fell asleep halfway through the movie, and Dante carried her upstairs. I followed, watching as he tucked her in with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing this for months. He'd come so far from the dangerous, controlled man I'd met in the diner. Or maybe he hadn't changed at all. Maybe this gentle father had always existed beneath the ruthless exterior, just waiting for someone to love. Back in our room, I found him on the balcony again. He spent a lot of time there, watching the city, keeping guard even when there was nothing to guard against. Old habits, he'd told me once. The instinct to watch for threats never really went away. You're thinking too much, I said, sliding my arms around him from behind as much as my belly would allow. I'm always thinking. He turned and pulled me close, his hand automatically going to my stomach. Planning for every possibility, every threat, every way to keep you all safe. We are safe. For now. But Sarah, there are things you need to know. Things I've put off telling you because I wanted you to just be happy, to not worry, to enjoy being pregnant and building our life. But with Sophia coming soon, I can't put it off anymore. My stomach dropped. What things? He led me inside and sat me down on the bed, then pulled out a folder from his nightstand. The kind of folder that usually contained bad news. My business. He started carefully. It's not just import-export. You know that. You've always known that. But you've never asked for details, and I've never offered them. I know you're involved in organized crime. That you're, what do they call it? A made man? Part of a family? I run the family, Sarah. My father did before he died, and I took over when I was 23. Everything you see, the house, the money, the security, it comes from businesses that operate in gray areas, legal on paper, but funded by things that aren't legal at all. My mouth went dry. Like what? Gambling, protection rackets, some drug distribution, though I'm trying to phase that out. Money laundering through legitimate businesses. He watched my face carefully. I've been working for 5 years to legitimize everything, to transition into legal enterprises, but it's slow. And in the meantime, I have responsibilities to people who work for me, families who depend on income from these operations. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to understand what you're part of. What Emma and Sophia will be part of. Because if something happens to me, you need to know who to trust, where the money really comes from, how to protect yourself and our daughters. He took my hands. I have lawyers, accountants, people who'll handle everything, but you need to know the truth, all of it. Are you in danger? The question came out strangled. Is someone threatening you? No more than usual. But with a new baby coming, with our family growing, I can't take chances. He pulled out papers from the folder. This is everything. Bank accounts, legitimate and offshore, property holdings, business contacts, people you can trust and people you absolutely cannot. Instructions for what to do if I'm arrested, if I'm killed, if anything happens that separates us. Tears burned my eyes. Don't talk like that. Don't plan for... I have to, amore. It's my job to plan for everything, including the worst. He cupped my face. But I don't plan to go anywhere. I plan to watch both our daughters grow up. To walk Emma down the aisle someday. To teach Sophia to ride horses. To grow old with you in this house we've built together. Then why? Because hope isn't a strategy. Because I love you too much to leave you unprepared. He kissed me softly. Because you're strong enough to handle the truth. And you deserve to know what you're protecting if I can't protect it myself. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. He was thorough, patient, answering every question even when the answers made me uncomfortable. By the end, I understood exactly what Dante Caruso really was. Not just a crime lord, but the head of an organization that employed hundreds of people, that controlled territory worth millions, that existed in the shadows of legitimate society. And I was his wife, his partner, the mother of his children, the person who'd inherit all of it if he died. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. Run an organization like this. Make the kinds of decisions you make. You won't have to. My second in command, Marco, you've met him. He'd handled day-to-day operations. You'd just sign papers, authorize transfers, make sure our daughters are provided for. He stroked my hair. But Sarah, you're stronger than you think. You survived Marcus. You survived years of struggling alone. You chose me knowing what I was. You can handle anything. I chose you because I loved you, because you made me feel safe, because you were good to Emma. I looked up at him. I chose the man, not the crime lord. They're the same person, amore. They've always been the same person. His smile was sad. I'm sorry I can't be the uncomplicated man you deserve. I'm sorry our life comes with danger and secrets and contingency plans for disasters. But I'm not sorry I found you. I'm not sorry I made you mine, and I'll never be sorry we built this family together. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into it. Love and fear and acceptance and the unshakable certainty that whatever came, we'd face it together. 3 weeks later, Sophia came into the world screaming. The labor was fast. Too fast, the doctor said. Barely enough time to get to the hospital. Dante held my hand through every contraction, his face pale but steady, his voice calm, even when I screamed and cursed and told him this was all his fault. And then she was there, tiny and perfect and impossibly beautiful, with Dante's dark hair and my nose and lungs that could wake the dead. She's perfect, Dante whispered, holding her with the same gentleness he showed Emma, this dangerous man reduced to tears by 7 pounds of baby girl. Sarah, she's perfect. Emma met her sister the next day, approaching the hospital bassinet with wide, wondering eyes. She's so small. You were this small once, I told her. Can I hold her? Dante lifted Sophia carefully and placed her in Emma's arms, supervised closely, supporting both girls. Gentle, just like we practiced with your dolls. Emma stared down at her sister with an expression of pure love. Hi, Sophia. I'm your big sister. I'm gonna protect you and teach you things, and we're gonna have so much fun together. My eyes burned with tears. This was what I'd wanted for Emma. Family, siblings, the security of knowing she wasn't alone. And watching her with Sophia, watching Dante watch both of them with such fierce protectiveness, I knew we'd built something real, something worth fighting for. We brought Sophia home to a house decorated with pink balloons and a banner Emma had made that said, "Welcome home, baby Sophia," in crooked letters. The staff had arranged flowers in every room, and there was a cake in the kitchen that Maria had spent 2 days perfecting. That first night was chaos. Sophia woke every 2 hours, screaming for food. I was exhausted, sore, overwhelmed by the reality of having 2 children and a body that felt like it had been through a war. But Dante was there for every feeding, changing diapers, walking Sophia around the room when she fussed, singing Italian lullabies in his deep voice until she calmed. At 3 a.m., I found him in the nursery, Sophia asleep on his chest, his hand covering her entire back. "You should sleep," I whispered. "So should you. But we're parents now. Sleep is theoretical." He smiled without opening his eyes. "Go rest, amore. I've got her." I should have argued. Should have taken Sophia back, but I was so tired, and he looked so peaceful holding our daughter. And the sight of them together made my chest ache with love. So I went back to bed, and slept for 4 hours straight, the longest stretch I'd get for months. The next few weeks were a blur of feedings and diapers and trying to balance Emma's needs with Sophia's. Dante took time off from work, as much as someone in his position could take time off, which meant working from home and being available for middle-of-the-night diaper changes. "You don't have to do this," I told him one night, after he'd gotten up with Sophia for the 3rd time. "You have people who work for you, nannies we could hire. I don't want nannies raising my daughter." "I want to raise her." He settled back into bed, pulling me against him. "I missed the first 3 years with Emma. I'm not missing Sophia's firsts, not if I can help it," and he didn't. He was there for Sophia's first smile, her first time sleeping through the night, her first laugh. He changed diapers without complaint, mastered the baby carrier so he could work with Sophia strapped to his chest, and somehow still found time to take Emma riding and read her bedtime stories, and make her feel like she was still his princess, even with a new baby in the house. "How do you do it?" I asked him one evening, while Sophia slept in his arms and Emma dozed against my side, all of us piled on the couch after dinner. "Balance everything? The business, our family, keeping everyone safe? I prioritize. You 3 are always the priority. Everything else is just details." He kissed Sophia's head. "And I have good people working for me who handle things when I can't. Marco runs most of the day-to-day operations now. I just make the big decisions and spend my evenings with my family. You make it sound simple. It's not. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than taking over the family business, harder than surviving my father's training, harder than anything I've faced in my life. But it's also the most rewarding." His eyes met mine. "You gave me this, Sarah. This family, this life, this purpose beyond just survival and power. You made me better than I was. You were always good. I just helped you remember it. 3 months after Sophia was born, everything changed again. I woke one morning to find Dante already dressed, his expression serious. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Those words never preceded good news. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Very right." He sat on the edge of the bed. "I got an offer yesterday. A legitimate businessman, tech mogul, completely clean. Wants to buy out my shipping operations. Not the illegal parts, just the actual ships and logistics network. For enough money that I could legitimize everything else. Walk away from the criminal enterprises. Focus on legal businesses. Give our daughters a life where their father isn't constantly looking over his shoulder." My heart raced. That's amazing. Why do you look worried?" "Because walking away isn't simple. The people who work for me, who depend on those operations, I'd need to make sure they're taken care of. And there are other families, rival organizations, who might see me going legitimate as weakness, as an opportunity to move in on my territory." His jaw clenched. "It could get dangerous. There could be a war before we find peace. But on the other side of that war, we'd be safe. Really safe. As safe as we can be. No more FBI investigations. No more explaining to Emma and Sophia why Papa has armed guards. No more lying awake wondering if today's the day someone tries to hurt you to get to me." He took my hands. "A real life, Sarah. The kind where we're just a family, not a crime family." "Now what do you want to do?" "I want to take the deal. I want to give you and our daughters everything you deserve, including legitimacy. But I won't do it if you think the risk is too great. This is your decision too." I thought about Emma, about Sophia, about the life they'd have if Dante could truly walk away from this world, about being able to tell them the truth about their father without shame or fear, about not having to prepare for the possibility of him being arrested or killed. "Do it," I said. "Take the deal. Fight the war if you have to, but get us to the other side." His smile was fierce. "That's my girl." The next 2 months were tense. Dante was gone more, surrounded by more security, having meetings that lasted until dawn. There were incidents. A warehouse fire that wasn't accidental. A shipment that disappeared. Threats delivered through intermediaries. But Dante had been preparing for this for 5 years, slowly transitioning operations, building legitimate businesses, creating alternatives for his people. When he finally announced he was going straight, he did it with enough money and offers of legitimate employment that most of his organization followed him willingly. The ones who didn't, the ones who tried to stop him, who saw his departure as betrayal. They learned why Dante Caruso had survived in this world for so long. I didn't ask for details. Some things were still better left unknown. By Sophia's first birthday, it was over. Dante's name appeared in business magazines. A profile of the shipping magnate who'd built an empire from nothing. His past was mentioned vaguely, connections to family businesses that he'd moved beyond. But there were no charges, no investigations, nothing concrete to tie him to his criminal past. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Walked away from the life he'd been born into and built something clean. "How does it feel?" I asked him that night, standing on our balcony while both girls slept, and the city sprawled below us like it had that first night I'd stayed here. Being legitimate? Strange. Like wearing someone else's clothes. He pulled me against him. But good. Right. Like I can finally breathe without waiting for the hammer to fall. No more contingency plans? No more folders full of instructions in case you die? Oh, there are still contingency plans. I'm still me. But now they're for normal things. Car accidents, illness, the kind of disasters that happen to regular families. His hand rested on my hip. Now I'm just a wealthy businessman with a beautiful wife and 2 perfect daughters. Now we're just a family. Just a family. It sounded so simple, so normal, so far from where we'd started. "I love you," I told him. "I loved you when you were dangerous, and I love you now that you're slightly less dangerous," he laughed. "I'm still dangerous, amore, just not criminally so. Any man who threatens my family will learn that very quickly." My dangerous, legitimate husband. I turned in his arms to kiss him. "My partner. My everything. Your everything," he agreed. For always. 2 years later, I stood in the garden while Emma, now 7 and beautiful and confident, helped Sophia blow out candles on her birthday cake. Dante stood beside me, his arm around my waist, watching our daughters with the same fierce protectiveness he'd always had. But now it was just protectiveness, not vigilance. Now we could have birthday parties without security sweeping the grounds first. Now Emma went to school without armed guards following at a distance. Now we were just another wealthy family celebrating a birthday. Nothing more complicated than that. "Happy?" Dante murmured against my ear, deliriously. I leaned into him. Although, I might be pregnant again. He went very still. Might be? Probably am. I took a test this morning. 3 tests, actually. All positive. I turned to look at him. I know we said 2 was enough, but... He kissed me, cutting off my nervous rambling, his arms tightening around me. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. 3 is perfect. 4 would be perfect. However many children you want to give me, I'll love them all with everything I am. He rested his forehead against mine. "You've given me everything, Sarah. A family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I was. What's one more miracle?" I laughed through happy tears, and across the garden, Emma looked up and saw us. Her face broke into a smile. "Mama, Papa, come have cake." We walked over together, Dante's hand in mine, and joined our daughters at the party table. Sophia, now 3 and just as bold as Emma had been at that age, climbed into Dante's lap, while Emma pressed against my side. This was my life now. Not struggling, not invisible, not drowning in debt and fear and exhaustion. But this. Wealthy and safe and loved, surrounded by a family built from danger and desperation, and the decision one exhausted waitress made to trust a dangerous man who saw her when everyone else looked through her. Marcus had been wrong. Someone had wanted a single mom. Someone had wanted me, exactly as I was, and had built me a fortress to keep me safe, and given my daughter his name and his protection and his everything. Dante Caruso had walked into a diner 6 months ago, or was it a lifetime, and changed everything. He'd seen me, claimed me, kept me. He'd taken my brokenness and polished it until it shone. He'd given me a life I'd never dared dream of. And as I sat there surrounded by my family, my husband, my daughters, the baby growing inside me, I knew I'd made the right choice, walking into his cage, letting him lock the door, surrendering to his possessive, protective love, because it wasn't a cage at all. It was home. It was safety. It was everything I'd been searching for my entire life, wrapped up in expensive suits and dangerous smiles, and a love so fierce it had transformed both of us. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked softly, Sophia asleep against his chest while Emma showed me the drawing she'd made. "That I love you," I said simply. "That I'd choose this life, this family, you, over and over again. That no one will ever convince me I made a mistake." His smile was soft, genuine, nothing like the dangerous predator he'd been when we met. Fatherhood and legitimacy and love had gentled him, though I knew the steel beneath remained. He'd always be dangerous. Just not to us. Never to us. "Good," he said, "because you're stuck with me forever, Mrs. Caruso. You and every daughter we make, my girls, my entire world." "Your entire world," I agreed, and kissed him while our daughters played and the sun set golden over our fortress, our home, our life. And it was perfect, not because it had been easy, not because we hadn't fought for it, bled for it, made impossible choices to get here, but because we'd chosen each other, because he'd seen me when I was invisible, because I'd trusted him when he was dangerous, because together we'd built something real from the ashes of our broken pasts. This was our story. This was our triumph. And as Emma's laughter rang out across the garden and Sophia stirred against Dante's chest and the baby inside me fluttered with life, I knew with absolute certainty this was exactly where I was meant to be.